So what's all this about that?
Hello, I'm Kyle. This is Give Pause Hobby, the channel where I stop to appreciate the things I love to fill my free time with. As promised before, I'm coming back with the second of the Empyreal Spells and Steam videos, this time all about the cool ideas found inside this box. Before it was all the cool things. There's a link in the corners. I'm trying to make sure this giant box doesn't fall on my lap. If you haven't seen that, and you're interested in all the cool stuff that's inside the box that makes it sound like this, then go check out that video. And if you're interested in seeing the mechanics that make the game run, this is the video for you. So I'm gonna kind of keep this pretty brief because I have a feeling that while maybe not all of these videos in the series for So What's All This About will be super terribly long, I have a feeling that this is gonna be like the other one. It's probably gonna go long. So with that, I'm going to get over to the table and show you what takes place in this game that makes it so fun, so cool, so interesting, and every game you play feel different than any other game. So with that, let's go. All right, so the first cool idea is just the map. The fact that each of these maps is made up of these smaller portions here, and depending on your player count, the rule book is going to tell you a certain layout, which I'm showing you here. So depending on how many folks you have around the table, you're going to choose different lettered map tiles. As you can see, these are the A map tiles. So for 2 or 3 players, you're going to take all 3 of either A or B, because they're kind of the same style where there's 2 cities per map and they all go together. Now, with that, you can completely change the order in which they are going. You can rotate. There's no real specified way of putting them together, and obviously that's going to mean sometimes you have like certain resources that are more tightly packed than others, but that's just a reality that the table has to deal with. If somebody doesn't capitalize on that, that's their own fault. And then each of the cities in the glorious like plastic city, what are these called? I forgot it last time too. Demand tiles, there it is. They hold the demand tiles, which I should just put 1 of each for today. So you know exactly where you need to go. And trust me, in a game like this, having any amount of clarity is definitely helpful because there's so much going on the board. Now, not only do you have the A and the B, but you also have the C and the D and the E, which can be any type of tile, which make the higher player counts possible. So again, just so much variety in just how the map is laid out. But then you also have all of these metro tiles, which each of them is going to represent, and they're double-sided, so they all have, all these pieces have 2 different possible rule sets, and they are going to go, no, I can't quite remember, I believe, no, not like that, like, how does it go? Okay, so I switched it around. I actually don't know if there's a specific ruling for it, but this way you're gonna put it down so it is 2 on this side and 1 on either of these other 2 map tiles. And if I were playing it, I would just make sure that it wasn't touching another city. So do it that way. And then this is a feature in the center of the map. So no matter how many players you have, you're going to have either 1 or 0 of these. And just like the specialists that you'll come to see in a little bit, each one has its own like rules that come in the form of the little shorthand that again makes sense once you know when you cash in a demand tile, you get to add a mana crystal. Or, oh boy, however many cities you have connected to Galston House at the end are 2 victory points each. So once you've played the game enough times, you're going to start to read this like code, but there's only going to be 1 in a game at most. But even with that, just 1 in a game and we talked about this last time, one of them adds all of these advisors, which otherwise would not exist. Another one adds all of these crazy trains that are going to cost 3 mana crystals to use because they get to put stuff on 3 tiles. And then another one has these other trains which don't take quite as much mana to use, but they do some crazy things like just moving your train from one forest to another anywhere in the map. So again, those are varieties that if you're not playing with that specific metro area, you're just not going to have those things in the game. So there's so much variety just in the space that you're going to be playing in. And then there's the other variety starting with this. So the next really cool thing is contained in these 2 decks, which is from the, as you can see, as above so below expansion, which are the different decks, the small little decks of cards for each of the companies, which can be made into an automa opponent, which can be added to solo games or as an extra player to other games. And then these generic cards, which we'll get more into in a second. So these are going to start unique, and they're actually rated in terms of difficulty in the rule book. So you have some more basic ones getting on down to more kind of tricksy, maybe more player interaction oriented, and then some genuinely kind of weird ones at the bottom. So let's see what's in these decks by dividing them up, because the cool part is some of these cards are kind of the same idea across the different bots. Some of them are completely unique to each company. So with that, let's spread them out. So here are the decks spread out into these 4 categories. On the left-hand side, you have the category that every bot has at least one of. One of them has 2, and that is the type that ends with the delivery icon. So instead of going across the board, and when you get to the end, the bot delivers, anytime this comes up, delivery happens. Now, for each of these bots, the stuff that precedes the delivery is going to be different. For instance, this is going to be any rail plus any wasteland, and then they're going to put trains there and then deliver, as opposed to this one, which would put on any biome at the edge of the map. Blue is going to deliver and then is going to send 2 or expend 2 of each player's mana crystals. So if you're playing with 1, then it'll just be yours. If you're playing free-for-all with multiplayers, all other players, human players, would expend a mana crystal. So this is kind of the end point for each of the bots decks. Then this is the kind of boring category, which is just 2 of something. 2 different types of biomes, and as you can see, not all of the bots have these. There are no ones for purple and orange, for instance, because there are more in this like that, but a little bit weirder. So this one has 2 biomes, but it allows it to take 1 transfer over one of these categories. So opponent rail, city, or wasteland. Same thing. Anywhere and a mountain, and then 1 transfer, and then just 2 anywheres. This is 2 anywheres and 1 transfer, and these are things like 2 mountains, 1 anywhere in a forest, and then 2 glaciers. So they're more specific to the factions because just like when players use them, the bots will have their home starting biome. And then the last one over here, this is like the genuinely kind of specific, like weird stuff. So mountain and placing a wasteland. So this is going to be glacier, desert, and then pulling a resource from an adjacent into network, expending a mana crystal, adding a spellcar, which for these we'll get to in a second, mana crystal, dropping wasteland, pulling other resources, and then for yellow, just taking another turn. So they're going to, when this comes up, not only place a desert, but then draw another card and do that as well. So each of the bots really does feel a bit different just to begin with. And we'll get to this in a second, but that's just like the player factions. But in addition to that, there is going to be this deck, which is going to be added to these decks. Every time that it makes it through the deck, you leave one card unused every time you go through it. Once you've gone through all the rest of the cards, you're going to draw the top card of this, add it to the deck. It doesn't matter what bot you're using. These are specific, these are general, and then this gets added in. So from now on, no matter if your bot had any wasteland tiles to begin with, now this one would mean you're going to place 1 in a mountain and 2 in wastelands from that point forward. It's going to just be part of the deck. So this represents, just like we saw over here, the bots adding train cars, because they don't actually, or spell cars, they don't actually have them. They have cards that take the place of the cars. Oh man, that is too much for this early in the morning. So let's look at these real quick. Get out of here. All right, so again, these are going to be mixed up, just totally randomly drawn. In one category, we have just the basic, put 2 trains in 2 different biomes. In the second category, they're all 2 of the same biomes, but each one at the bottom has the ability for them to make 1 transfer over one of these 3 categories. And then the last one is the kind of weird one. So mountain, 2 wastelands, pulling a resource cube from another network, which this one sucks. It's going to steal stuff from you. This one flips your captain over so you can't use it. Undoes 2 mana crystals, takes another turn, which could be drawn into that yellow deck, which means it would have 2 of these double turn cards, or could be a triple turn, I suppose. Adding another train card, spell card, spellcar, oh my goodness, which again these are the spellcars for the robots. And then just a forest and anything. Now the rules for the bots, there are some kind of edge cases. Not edge cases, it's like, sort of like an order of priority for how they want to build. Primarily, they want to build towards as many cities as they can. Any cities that they're not connected to, they want to make that possible. Anytime they have a tie, they want to go into a space that has a player train on it, because then hopefully they can steal stuff from them, and then a couple other steps there. But so that means these cards can be very basic. It can just be icons, and then once you know the inner workings of the brains of the bots, you can apply them as necessary. So again, really cool system of bots that not only feel different to begin with, but they are going to get weirder and more different as the game goes on, just like the players are. So an amazing, simple way to include a bot, which I've played both solo and adding as a 3rd player when me and my wife are playing. So the next cool thing that I love in this game is how many different specialists are available that you're going to be able to see. So the specialists in this game come in the form of 3 flavors: your engineers, your surveyors, and your station masters. So these in the game are going to be kind of reusable. So you flip this engineer over, pay 1 mana to gain a mana crystal. I've got this guy, he's good. Flip him over, and then there are ways you can unflip this so you can use it again. There are also going to be these surveyors, which are one-time use. As far as I know, there is no way to unflip a surveyor. It is a one and done. For instance, this guy just lets you take another turn. I've also had this one. He was also very good. So once he's flipped down, he's just done. And then the last type, the station master, is something that's going to give you a benefit of some sort. In this case, it's only going to cost you 1 mana to transfer over cities for the rest of the game, which is not the cost that it normally is. Now this will never get flipped. It's just a added bonus. This one allows you to take your action and activate and then move your conductor. This one, anytime you do that action, I can't remember what it's called. Administrate, there it is. Anytime you administrate, you also get to add a train car. So these are just going to make your company better overall in some weird way. These are going to do small things but repeatable, and this is one huge thing. Now the way this works is for each game, you're going to take a certain number of each of these specialists depending on how many players were in it. So if I was playing with 3 players, I would take 4 engineers and I would take 4 surveyors and 4 station masters. And when you have the opportunity to do so, you are able to pick up one of these types of cards, or tiles, I guess. So you say, you know what, I want something that's just going to make me better, but I'm not going to have to worry about using it, blah, blah, blah. So you're going to flip over all the station masters, and you're going to look at all of them, and you say, ooh, oh, sorry, I misread it. That's 0. It costs nothing to go over the cities. Yeah, that sounds great. So these other 3, you're going to put face down, and you get to add this to your board. So you have this power, nobody else will because you took it, and you know what else is in this pile. So for the 2 other players, if they take station masters, you know what they're going to be pulling for, so you can use that information as much as you wish. So then this just gets added to your company board, and later on you might eventually look at the surveyors. Ooh, this one just lets you destroy all the trains surrounding one of yours. Yeah, if you're a mean player, you can jump over a city and destroy everybody's trains. And then the last one, ooh, lets you put trains on a competitor's train network. Maybe we can even link that up with Aerial Malphase. And then eventually you could have these, like, you know, unique abilities, because there are no repeats in this deck, or in these piles. You could have completely unique engineer, surveyor, and station master combinations, or you can maybe just use an engineer. I've done that in the game. Maybe you could just get a train master. There are different times, obviously, at the end of the game. If you haven't gotten any of them, you know, the surveyors are going to be the most bang for your buck, but you never know. Something in this station master pile might make that last play possible, and otherwise it just wouldn't be. So this adds a tremendous amount of replayability and just variability. And if you're wondering why they look a little bit different in these piles, is because I have separated out each one into the powers that are just a little bit, they're not crazy, but right now, since the game is still brand new, there's enough powers to keep track of. And we talked about this in the other video. When we're going to these specialists, there are just pages and pages of explanation, and that's just the base game. So there's lots of rules to be explained in here. Now again, once you learn the vocabulary of this game, you know, like the red hex with a train, you know that that's a competitor train just on the map. But until you sort of, and you know, that applies here too. So if you kill one of your trains, you get to destroy any competitor trains in the surrounding hexes, which is crazy. But until you get to that level of comfort, these are all going to be just like hieroglyphics that you're going to need to access the rule books for. So I've separated out each of these piles, so the smaller of them is just a little bit, you know, above our pay grade, and we will get to them eventually. There are also, some of them are just like really mean, like just destroy a request tile, which the rule book even has a list if you don't want to have as like, you know, competitive, not as competitive, but as like aggressive game, to take certain specialists and spellcars out. So yeah, just the specialists I think are such a cool model. And a certain, not really a specialist, but kind of in that same vein, each of the companies, so this is Afterworld Express, each of the companies has 2 captains once you get the As Above, So Below expansion. So depending on which company you are using, so these are the kind of see-through ghost trains, you get to choose between Drexel and Dolores. So switching your train for a competitor's, or removing a resource cube from a competitor's rail anywhere on the map and putting it on your own. That costs you 1 mana. So when you choose this company, you get to choose which captain you want to play as. And also, like we talked about last time, there are these 2 generic captains. which are a little bit more universal abilities. They're not quite as thematically tied to these companies. So again, for beginning players, these might be great, or just for people who want to mix it up and have the boards of certain companies, but the captain abilities of another. So that's really cool, and it dovetails into the next really cool thing about this game, which is the companies themselves. So I'm going to clean these up instead of showing that to you, and I'm going to bring out what to me is one of like the pinnacle cool things about this game, which is also one of the cool ideas of this game, and we'll do that here. This table is getting full with stuff again. So these are the 8 companies. Again, if you only have the base game, you will not have Star Chaser and Underlands? Yes. So Star Chaser and Underlands, these are part of the As Above, So Below expansion. So you just have the other 6. So I have 8, because this game goes up to 8, which is bananas. And the cool thing about these companies, like the cool ideas, not only do each of these have their own 2 captains and their own color and their own shape of the trains, which we showed last time, but they also have their own company board, which isn't just a pretty thing to look at. It's different along here. Every single company is going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 columns of single trains, and then 2 over here. And every single company is going to kind of follow the same idea. On the left-hand side, where your engineer is going to be moving, not engineer, I can't think of the name, the train guy, is going to have more flexibility over here. So sometimes like 3 different biomes, and then down to 2. And then down to 1. So in the middle, they get really constricted as to what they can do. Then their flexibility opens up again, but it's going to cost you a mana. And then in the last column, not only do you have 2 trains to either choose between or pay extra mana to do both, but you have over here sometimes the unique things to that company. So with Kerrigan, not only will you're getting your first glacier opportunity over here, but also for 1 mana you can choose to either add an engineer, one of the specialists, engineer, surveyor, or trainmaster, or you can flip back over your captain and your engineer. So that is unique to Kerrigan. Not only that, but Kerrigan starts in the lava area, and just looks, different. And each one, crazily enough, has like company profiles as to what they are, or who they are, what they're up to. So you have that going on in the background. But say Golden Sands, so you can see sort of the same idea: 3, 2, 1, 2, but it costs you 2, but it costs you. But also, for no additional mana, you could choose over here to add a train car. So Golden Sands is just making themselves more unique as they go. Gesselheim, 3, 2, 1, 2, but it costs you, 2, but it costs you. And over here, going to drop a wasteland tile somewhere on the map. And then when you do that, then you can put a train down on a wasteland. Could be the one you just placed it on, or it could be another one. Which there are some companies that have no interaction with wasteland. So this is a hugely asymmetric one. And last but not least, for an example, Star Chaser sort of breaks the rules. So 2, 2, 1, but that 1 is anything at the edge of a map. So it is restrictive, but also not. Then 2, but it'll cost you. Anything next to a city, it'll cost you. And then last one, you can move one of your trains just over 1. So if you're just 1 off from being able to connect to another part of the map, you can pay 1 mana and just move that train, and now you're connected. And then there are 4 other ones. So the fact that there are, in these 8 companies, there are unique trains that your conductor, that's the name, is going to be moving down, which again, the cool idea of this is you can always move one over and access one train car for free. So if I was here, I could move here and then I could choose one of these, but then I would have to pay 1 mana. But if I wanted to get there, I could, if I was here, I could go 1, 2, and pay 3 mana to go there. And then I could pay 1 additional mana to access an additional train. So that would be 3 mana to move, 1 mana to do 2 trains, and then 2 more mana for each of them. So for 6 mana, I could go from here to here and do both of these train cars. So there's a lot of variety in how it's laid out from company to company, but there's also a lot of flexibility in how you want to use this. Do you want to just play it cheap and slow and just go down, not spend any additional mana? Or do you want to maybe add up, kind of get more mana so you can do some of these bigger, more brash and faster moves? And on that, there's your delivery rewards at the end of the line, the railroad crossing here. You're going to have the opportunity to make a delivery. So any number of a good, you can deliver it to a city that is asking for it. And if you can complete the number of goods in the middle of a card, you get to take it, and then you get that many victory points. So if you have 2 of this heartwood, I think is green, you cash those in, you keep the goods on your card because they're going, or your board, because they're going to be worth victory points. You could take this and you're going to place it here, and depending on player count, this is one of the ways you can push endgame. So for 2 or 3 players, the first time someone gets their 6th request card, the end game is going to be triggered. Or if you put down all of your spellcars, or your actual, not spellcars, but your actual trains on a map, that's another way to push end game. But regardless if you make a delivery or not, you get to choose, how do you want to customize your company? Do you want to add a mana crystal and refresh all of them? Do you want to choose one of the specialists to add, one of the types, and then refresh your captain and engineer? Or do you want to add 2 train cars? So knowing what we know about how many different specialists there are, and what we're about to find out about the spellcars, this is like customization inception. Like, yo dog, I heard you like choices, so I'm going to have you make choices about which choices you're going to make. And it all feels so good because your companies are going to become so different because of these choices. It's just bananas. So the last cool idea, which should come as no surprise, is just the spellcars themselves. So not only are these going to be, some of them are going to be very basic. The more basic they are, the less mana they cost to use. So this is the lava mover. Put 1 in a mountain or a lava. Oasis transport doesn't cost you anything. Put 1 just the desert. But when you use this, you can skip over a city or a wasteland for free to use it. Then you're going to have some that are going to cost you 1. So transmuter is going to take a resource type and turn it into whatever else you want. Maybe you don't care about the green resources, but you really want more blue ones. Get rid of green and turn it into blue. Then you're going for mirror box. Once you get blue down on the board, mirror box is going to allow you to duplicate a resource that's already in your network. Now both these cost 1. Luxury carriage, you have to choose. You're either going to get to choose another spellcar or go to those specialists and take 1 from the market there. So speaking of the market, as you play the game, you're going to have 6 spellcars that are in this little tray. So it both acts as your storage system, but also your market itself. If you ever get to the point when people have chosen different ones and you only have 2 spell cards left, at that point you are going to get rid of all of those and grab 6 new ones and put those out. And the fact that there are so many different spell cars here, there are, you know, the more basic ones, there are increasingly not basic ones that allow you to choose between 3 different ones. This one, you don't have to choose. Lavalanche Mark II lets you go to both lava and forest, but it'll cost you 2 mana. But also, once you've chosen the spell card that you want, so let's say I want this Wind Rider that lets me skip over an opponent's rail, I have to choose where I'm going to put it in my train, my company's like setup. Now I can't just put it over here. You can't put anything into the 3rd level until your 2nd level is complete. So you have to choose, do I want to put it here and maybe double up on desert? Do I want to put it in one of the other ones? So now I have the option of using 1, 2, or a 3rd, or, you know, one of these and this one. Or do I put it here? Kind of skirt around the outside of the map, and then once I get somewhere, go whoop and skip over an opponent for free to put someone on desert. And where you put this in your order makes a big difference. For instance, this one that's going to cost 2, the further back I put this in my my train, the more cumbersome it may feel, because as you remember, one of the end of the line bonuses that you can choose is adding a mana crystal and refreshing all of them. Now, mana crystals are just like your kind of like a punch card for energy. So if you choose that as your reward, you're going to bring your conductor back to the start and they're going to have the maximum amount of mana. So maybe this is better suited over here. But again, I already have red here, so maybe I don't want that there. Maybe I want to make it here. So there's just all of these you know, min-maxing and just kind of efficiency puzzles to be going on. And then you have things like this that are, you know, not just your standard laying down trains on certain terrain types. This one lets you refresh 1 mana crystal in addition to putting a guy down on a lake. So the hydrodynamic car. Again, and every one of these has slightly different artwork and has a different name. Okay, so yeah, I went a little long, like I anticipated. So I'll try to keep this brief too, which is to say, Empyreal is awesome. I mean, I guess you can kind of consider these "So What's All This About" videos as a sort of review series, like endorsements of cool games, because I'm frankly not going to take the time to do it for games that I don't care for. These are games that I not only enjoy, but I own. I own them, and I played them a bunch. Now, I've only played this one 4 times, but it has been requested a number of other times already by my wife, and I have been thinking about it, so it is going to be flying off our shelves, which is somewhat surprising, because this is a box that, aside from falling, is not really one you would associate flying with. But it's incredible. So take that for what it's worth. As someone who loves all the toyness factor of what's in this box, but I also just went through at length all the mechanics that I think are marvelous about this game, that stick with my thoughts long after it's done, and preempt the games. I'm just wondering what's going to come out, what spell cards are we going to get, what company am I going to play as, what AI are we going to use, because anytime, now that I'm, you know, super versed at this point, like if there's an automa opponent, I'm pretty much going to use it if I'm playing a 2-player game with my wife, because that gives us someone else in the room. That third wheel allows us to not only be completely head-to-head, which we have no problem, you know, going at the other one in a game when it is required of us, but it's nice to have another option to go a different direction as well. So we're always going to have one in the game, so I'm wondering which one of those I'm going to use, how the map's going to set up. Are we going to use a metro? I wonder if the specialist, am I going to hard charge into engineer or use a station map? Like, there's just so many different things that you can kind of focus on or gloss over or take little smatterings of throughout the game. It's just incredible. And you know, in this day and age, there's a lot of buyer's remorse. There's a lot of backing something months and months or years in the past, and then you finally get it, and either it's not the game you wanted, or you as a person have changed. Maybe back when you backed it, it was exactly what you wanted, but your tastes have evolved or adjusted over the years. This one, I didn't quite resonate with me when it was first you know, being kickstarted. Then once it was out, I saw it and I was like, you know, it seems interesting, but also seems really intimidating with that size box, that amount of components, and that price tag. But what I was hearing from people when I said, we love Via Nebula, which is a route building kind of train light sort of game. Like, what's a game that's a step up from that? Because my wife and I love it. And I heard from multiple people, they're like, you know, from price tag and rules, it seems like nothing similar, because Via Nebula is a pretty small box, not small, but normal box, smallish time investment with rules and everything. It's gonna at first glance seem like a totally different category, but it's actually a really nice next step up, like very similar, but also with lots of that gamery breadth, the opportunity to go different ways, is Empyreal. And I looked into it and I got it, and months and months went by and it showed up and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so huge. I'm really excited, but am I hyping it up too much? And I got to the table and I was like, holy moly, this is exactly the game that I want it to be. And there's so much of it to explore. So it's gonna be with us for a long time, and we are going to really look forward to playing it time and time again. And all the reasons I talked about today are the primary reason for that, all the variety. But also everything I talked about last time is going to play a part in it too, because if they were just like cardboard chits instead of trains, that'd be different. If the player boards weren't as fancy, that'd be different. If the city tiles didn't look so cool, if just the whole package wasn't so complete, who knows what we'd think of. Maybe it'd be like, wow, this game is bloated and ridiculous. But the production is so well done that you'd be hard pressed to absolutely with a straight face say, this game is 0% bloated. But again, as I showed you today, hopefully you see all of that bloat is towards a good thing. And so I guess maybe by definition, it's not bloat, it's what it should be. As the experience that it is, it's exactly as ridiculous as I would want it to be. I wouldn't want any fewer engineers. I wouldn't want any fewer companies. I wouldn't want any fewer anything. What I have here is awesome, and I can't wait to explore it all in the months and years to come. So that's all I have to say, and after the end of a second, probably pretty long video. If you've made it here again, I'm just gonna ask you the same thing and do a choo-choo, but part 2, choo-choo part 2 in the comments. And again, if you've made it this far, like, subscribe, all that stuff, because this year my goal is to just keep taking games I love off my shelf and doing the SWATA treatment with them. Show you what they have in them, like the components, and what mechanics make those components move. So until that time, happy gaming, and I'll see you with the next one.